They fired her for how she looked. She was humiliated. One woman turned discrimination into her greatest power.
Have you ever looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back at you? Not because you changed, but because someone convinced you that you weren't enough. I spent 28 years of my life believing my skin was my greatest professional asset. I was wrong. My skin became my greatest weapon. My name is Jasmine Carter, and 3 years ago, I was the vice president of marketing at LuxGlow Beauty, one of the largest luxury cosmetics companies in the United States. I worked 16-hour days, sacrificed relationships, holidays, even my own mental health, all to prove I deserved to be in that boardroom. And for a while, it seemed like I'd made it. Vancouver in winter is brutal. The rain doesn't stop. It's the kind of cold that sticks to your skin and seeps into your bones. But I loved that city. I loved the mountains in the background, the tree-lined streets, the Korean cafes on Robson Street where I'd buy my favorite tteokbokki on Friday nights. Vancouver gave me something no other place ever had, a sense of belonging, until it didn't anymore. It all started on a Tuesday in February, quarterly meeting, CEO present. I'd spent 3 weeks preparing the presentation for launching the new inclusive skincare line. My idea, my project, my baby. I knew it would change the game. Products for every skin tone and every condition, every texture. Finally, real beauty. I walked into that conference room on the 23rd floor wearing my red blazer, my lucky color, with my digital portfolio ready. 15 executives seated, 12 men, 3 women. And in the center of the table, as always, Sungwon Kang, CEO, Korean-Canadian, 42 years old, perfectly styled hair, Armani suit, Patek Philippe watch that cost more than my apartment. He didn't look at me when I entered. "Good morning, everyone," I said, connecting my laptop to the projector. My voice was steady. I'd rehearsed this 100 times. Today, I'm going to present something that will redefine the beauty market as we know it. A truly inclusive product line with formulas. Jasmine. His voice cut through the room like ice. Sungwon didn't lift his head from the papers in front of him. He finally looked at me. His eyes were cold, calculated. "Do you think your appearance is appropriate for representing a luxury brand?" Silence. Total. Absolute. You could hear the air conditioning humming. I blinked, trying to process what he just said. I'm sorry, I don't understand the question." He sighed, as if I were a slow child. "Your skin, Jasmine, the spots, the vitiligo, do you really think that conveys the image we want?" He gestured vaguely in my direction, as if I were a defective piece on a production line. "Our clients expect perfection, and you, well, you're not exactly the standard, are you?" I felt my stomach drop. Vitiligo. I'd had vitiligo since I was 16. White patches on my face, neck, hands. I'd spent years learning to love my skin, years fighting the voice in my head that said I was stained, imperfect, ugly. And here he was, the CEO of the company where I'd poured blood, sweat, and tears, telling me exactly that. "Mr. Kang," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "my vitiligo has never affected my professional performance. In fact, that's exactly why this inclusive line is so important." "People like you," he interrupted, "are not our target audience." He closed the folder in front of him with a sharp snap. LuxGlow isn't about inclusion, it's about aspiration, luxury. And frankly, Jasmine, you don't aspire to anything but, well, pity. The room got even quieter. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. I looked around, searching for an ally, a face showing indignation, shock, anything. But all I saw were eyes looking away, heads dropping, hands busy with pens and phones. Cowardly, they let it happen. "With all due respect," I continued, my voice shaking now, "I have the best conversion rates in this company. My campaigns generated $80 million in revenue last quarter. My work..." Your work, he cut in again, standing up from his chair, ends today. Effective immediately. You're fired. Security will escort you to your desk to collect your belongings. He turned to the CFO next to him. You and so, please arrange the termination paper.
My brain couldn't catch up with what was happening. Fired? Publicly humiliated? Because of my skin? The room started spinning. I heard someone, maybe it was me, say, "This can't be legal." Sun Huan smirked. "Take it up with HR. Oh wait, you don't work here anymore." 2 security guards appeared at the door within minutes. They didn't touch me, but they didn't need to. The message was clear. You're not welcome here. I walked through that office with my head held high, even though every part of me wanted to collapse. My colleagues, people I'd worked alongside for 6 years, avoided eye contact. Some pretended to be on phone calls, others suddenly became very interested in their computer screens. My desk was in the corner by the window. I'd always loved that view. The mountains in the distance, the harbor, the seaplanes taking off. I grabbed my picture frames. One of my mom, one of my college graduation, one of me accepting an industry award. I shoved them in my bag along with my succulent plant that miraculously hadn't died yet. The security guards watched me like I might steal something, as if this company hadn't already stolen enough from me. It was raining when I walked out of that building for the last time. Of course it was. Vancouver rain in February feels personal, like the city itself is crying with you, or at you. I stood on the sidewalk, bag in hand, mascara probably running down my face, and I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my mom. "Baby girl, what's wrong?" Her voice was warm, concerned. She always knew. "They fired me, Mom." My voice cracked. "Because of my skin. He said I wasn't perfect enough." There was a long pause. Then she said something that changed everything. "Good. Now you're free to be who you really are." I didn't understand what she meant at the time. I was too angry, too hurt, too humiliated. But my mom, Lorraine Carter, wasn't the type to say things without meaning them. She'd raised me alone after my dad died when I was 8. She'd worked 3 jobs to put me through college. And she taught me one very important lesson. When someone shows you who they are, believe them, and then show them who you are. I spent that night in my apartment crying, drinking wine I couldn't afford, and scrolling through job listings. But something kept nagging at me. A thought. A dangerous thought. What if I didn't just move on? What if I made him pay? The next morning, I did something crazy. I posted my story on LinkedIn. Every detail. The humiliation, the words he used, the way my colleagues did nothing. I didn't expect much. Maybe some sympathy likes, maybe a few encouraging comments. What I got instead changed my life. The post went viral within 6 hours. Not just viral, nuclear. 10,000 shares? 20,000? Comments poured in from people with vitiligo, with scars, with disabilities, with every imperfection the beauty industry had ever told them made them unworthy. Major news outlets picked it up. Beauty bloggers shared it. Even celebrities started commenting, calling out LuxGlow by name.
Interview requests, support messages, jab offers. But one message stood out. It came from an email address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "We need to talk about your stepmother." I almost deleted it. It sounded like spam. But something made me click it open. Jasmine, my name is Dr. Wei Chen. I'm a reproductive endocrinologist in Seoul. Your stepmother, Miranda Hayes, has been a client of mine for the past 2 years. I think you need to know what she's been doing. Please call me at the number below. It's urgent. My stepmother. I hadn't talked to Miranda in over a year, not since my dad's funeral. She'd married him when I was 16, right after my mom and dad divorced. I'd never liked her. She was cold, calculating, always interested in dad's money more than dad himself. When he died of a heart attack 2 years ago, she inherited everything. His estate, his investments, his controlling stake in Hayes Medical Technologies, a pharmaceutical company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I stared at my phone, wouldn't stop buzzing. Interview requests, support messages, job offers. But one message stood out. It came from an email address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "We need to talk about your stepmother." I almost deleted it. It sounded like spam, but something made me click it open. Jasmine, my name is Dr. Wei Chen. I'm a reproductive endocrinologist in Seoul. Your stepmother, Miranda Hayes, has been a client of mine for the past 2 years. I think you need to know what she's been doing. Please call me at the number below. It's urgent. My stepmother. I hadn't talked to Miranda in over a year, not since my dad's funeral. She'd married him when I was 16, right after my mom and dad divorced. I'd never liked her. She was cold, calculating, always interested in Dad's money more than Dad himself. When he died of a heart attack 2 years ago, she'd inherited everything: his estate, his investments, and his controlling stake in Hayes Medical Technologies, a pharmaceutical company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I stared at that email for 10 minutes before I called the number. Dr. Chen answered on the first ring. "Miss Carter, thank you for calling." His voice was professional but tense. "I need to tell you something that may be difficult to hear. Your stepmother has been paying me to perform illegal egg extractions on someone. She told me it was a surrogate who'd consented, but I recently discovered she's been drugging and harvesting eggs from a minor. Your half-sister, Lily." The world tilted. Lily? My 16-year-old half-sister? Miranda's daughter from her first marriage? Sweet, quiet Lily, who I tried to stay in touch with after Dad died, but Miranda had always blocked my calls. "What do you mean, harvesting?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Miss Carter, over the past 2 years, your stepmother has extracted and sold 23 batches of your sister's eggs to wealthy couples, primarily in Asia, for $500,000 per extraction. Your sister doesn't know. She's been told she has a hormone imbalance that requires monthly treatments. But those treatments are sedations followed by surgical egg retrieval." I thought I was going to vomit. How do you know this?" "Because I was the one performing the procedures." His voice cracked. "I thought I was helping infertile couples, but last month, Lily woke up during a procedure. She saw what was happening. She asked me what I was doing. I told her it was a routine blood test, but she's getting suspicious. And, Miss Carter, there's more. Your stepmother is planning one final procedure. She's negotiating with a buyer in Singapore to remove and sell Lily's entire reproductive system, ovaries, uterus, everything, for $5 million. The procedure is scheduled for next week." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My 16-year-old sister was being harvested like livestock, and I'd had no idea. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I can't live with it anymore. I saw your post about LuxGlow, about standing up to people who treat you as less than human. Your sister needs someone to stand up for her, and I need to confess before I become complicit in murder." "Murder?" "Removing all of her reproductive organs will leave her sterile and hormonally compromised for life. At her age, the complications could be fatal. This isn't medicine, it's butchery for profit." I hung up and immediately called every law enforcement agency I could think of. But I quickly learned something that made my blood run cold. Miranda Hayes was untouchable. She had connections, lawyers, politicians, and most importantly, she had money, the kind of money that makes problems disappear. But I had something she didn't. I had nothing left to lose. I booked a flight to Seattle. That's where Miranda lived in my dad's old waterfront estate. I had 48 hours before Lily's scheduled procedure. I needed evidence, I needed a confession, and I needed to be smart about it. On the plane, I mapped out a plan. Miranda didn't know about my LinkedIn post going viral. She didn't use social media. She'd see me as the same broken stepdaughter she'd always dismissed. Harmless, emotional, easy to manipulate. I'd use that. When I arrived at the estate, I didn't announce myself. I used my old key, the one Dad had given me when I was 18, the one Miranda didn't know I'd kept. The house was exactly as I remembered. Cold, pristine, empty despite having 10,000 square feet of space. I heard voices coming from the study. Miranda's voice and another voice, male, accented, Korean. I crept closer and set up my phone to record through the crack in the door. The Singapore buyer has confirmed. $5 million wired upon completion of the procedure. Dr. Chen will perform the extraction next Tuesday at the private clinic. And you're certain the organs are viable? Miranda's voice was businesslike, casual, as if she were discussing furniture instead of her daughter's body. Dr. Chen confirmed fertility markers are excellent. The girl is young, healthy, never been on hormonal birth control. Her reproductive system is worth the premium price. Good. And after the procedure, we'll tell her it was an emergency appendectomy. She'll be sedated for recovery, and by the time she realizes something is wrong, the evidence will be gone. I felt bile rise in my throat. This woman had married my father, lived in our home, smiled at family dinners, and all the while she was capable of this? There's one concern, the man continued. The older daughter, Jasmine. Dr. Chen mentioned she might be suspicious. Miranda laughed, cold, sharp. Jasmine is pathetic. She just got herself fired for having ugly skin. She's too busy crying about herself to worry about anyone else.
When I kicked the
She's
door
not a
open,
threat.
the man, who I later learned was Miranda's broker for the egg sales, jumped. Miranda's face went white, then red. How dare you break into my house? Dad's house, I corrected. The house I have a legal right to visit. And I've recorded everything. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across Miranda's face. That recording is inadmissible. Maybe in court, but not in the court of public opinion. I pulled out my phone and showed her my LinkedIn post. See this? 3 million views, 50,000 shares, CNN interview scheduled for tomorrow. And guess what the follow-up story is going to be? A beauty executive fired for her skin exposes her step.
That's when I kicked the door open. The man, who I later learned was Miranda's broker for the egg sales, jumped. Miranda's face went white, then red. How dare you break into my house? Dad's house, I corrected. The house I have a legal right to visit. And I've recorded everything. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across Miranda's face. That recording is inadmissible. Maybe in court, but not in the court of public opinion. I pulled out my phone and showed her my LinkedIn post. See this? 3 million views, 50,000 shares, CNN interview scheduled for tomorrow. And guess what the follow-up story is going to be? A beauty executive fired for her skin exposes her stepmother's illegal organ trafficking operation. Catchy, right? The broker stood up. I should leave. Sit down. I didn't raise my voice, but something in my tone made him obey. Because if you walk out that door, I'm calling the police right now. But if you stay and tell me everything, every buyer, every transaction, every detail, I might let you walk away with just your reputation destroyed instead of your freedom. He looked at Miranda. She looked at me. And for the first time in my life, I saw her realize I wasn't the weak little stepdaughter she could dismiss. Over the next hour, he told me everything. The network of buyers, the falsified medical records, the offshore accounts, the clinic in Seoul that performed the procedures, and most importantly, where Lily was right now. She was upstairs,
in her bedroom, sleeping off what she'd been told was migraine medication, but was actually a sedative to keep her compliant for hormone treatments. I went upstairs and found her. 16 years old, thin, pale, dark circles under her eyes. She looked like she'd been sick for months, because she had been. I sat on her bed and gently shook her awake. "Lily, it's Jasmine. I need you to listen very carefully." She looked at me groggily. "Jasmine? Mom said you didn't want to see me anymore." She lied. About a lot of things, but I need you to wake up now. We need to leave. It took 20 minutes to get her coherent enough to understand what had been happening to her. When she finally did, she didn't cry, she didn't scream. She just looked at me and said, "I knew something was wrong, I just didn't know it was that wrong." We walked downstairs together. Miranda was pacing in the study, her broker long lawn. When she saw Lily, her mask slipped back on. "Sweetheart, what are you doing up? You need to rest." "She knows," I said simply. Miranda's face went through several emotions at once: shock, fear, anger, and finally, calculation. "Lily, your sister is mentally unstable. She's making up stories because she's jealous of our life." "Mom, stop." Lily's voice was quiet but firm. "I woke up during one of the procedures last month. I saw what Dr. Chen was doing. I've been pretending not to know because I was scared of you. But Jasmine's right. It has to stop."
I don't know if she meant to hit me or grab my phone, but she never got the chance. Because I'd done one more thing before confronting her. I'd called the police. And they'd been listening to everything through my phone's open line. 3 officers came through the front door within seconds, led by Detective Sarah Ochoa from the Seattle PD's Human Trafficking Unit. Miranda froze mid-lunge, her face cycling through shock, rage, and finally calculation. She knew how to perform. She'd been doing it her whole life. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," Miranda said, her voice suddenly trembling and vulnerable. "My stepdaughter broke into my home and has been threatening me. I'm the victim here." "Ma'am, we heard the entire conversation." Detective Ochoa held up her own recording device. "You've been on an open line for the past 20 minutes. We have your confession to human trafficking, illegal medical procedures, and child endangerment. You're under arrest." The color drained from Miranda's face. For the first time since I'd known her, she had no comeback, no manipulation, no escape route. "You have the right to remain silent," Ochoa continued, stepping forward with handcuffs. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." I watched them cuff her. Watched them lead her out of my father's house. My house, legally, though I didn't know it yet. The broker had already fled through the back door, but 2 other officers were in pursuit. They caught him trying to climb the fence into the neighbor's yard. When the police took Miranda away, the house fell silent. Lily stood next to me, still groggy, still processing. She looked at me with eyes that were both grateful and devastated. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now," I said, "we make sure you're safe, and then we make sure this never happens to anyone else." The next 72 hours were a blur. Detective Ochoa connected us with a specialized medical team at Seattle Children's Hospital. They ran tests, comprehensive tests, to assess the damage from 2 years of unauthorized medical procedures. The results were heartbreaking. Dr. Samira Patel, the lead gynecologist, sat us down in a consultation room with soft lighting and tissue boxes strategically placed on every surface. That's when I knew the news was bad. "Lily," Dr. Patel said gently, "the repeated egg extractions have caused significant scarring to your ovaries. There's also evidence of hormone imbalance from the medications you were given. The good news is that your organs are intact and functional. The complicated news is that your fertility may be compromised." Lily's face crumpled. "Maybe? We won't know for certain until you're older, and if you choose to try to conceive. But I want to be honest with you, the damage is substantial. Natural conception could be difficult. Not impossible, but difficult." I reached over and took Lily's hand. She squeezed it so hard my fingers went numb. "However," Dr. Patel continued,
You're 16. Your body still has remarkable healing capacity. With proper treatment, hormone therapy, and time, we may be able to improve your prognosis significantly. You're not doomed, Lily. You've been hurt, but you're not broken. Over the next few weeks, the investigation expanded beyond anything I could have imagined. The FBI got involved. International authorities were contacted. Because Dr. Chen's records revealed something that made my blood run cold. Lily wasn't the only victim. Miranda had been running this operation for 5 years, not 2. Before Lily, there had been 3 other girls. Runaways, foster kids. Girls who wouldn't be missed. Girls whose biological material could be harvested and sold without anyone noticing. The FBI found them, or rather, found what happened to them. 2 were still alive, living with severe medical complications and psychological trauma. The 3rd had died from an infection following a botched procedure. She was 14 years old. Her name was Sophie Chen. No relation to Dr. Chen, just a terrible coincidence. She'd been buried in an unmarked grave in a cemetery outside Tacoma. When I learned about Sophie, something inside me broke and reformed simultaneously. This wasn't just about saving Lily anymore. It was about justice for all of them. For Sophie, who never got to grow up. For the 2 survivors whose names I can't share for legal reasons, who were living with the consequences of Miranda's greed every single day. The media descended like locusts. My viral LinkedIn post about LuxGlow had made me semi-famous in business circles. But this story, a beauty executive fired for her skin who then exposes her stepmother's trafficking ring, this was national news, international news. CNN called. So did NBC, CBS, ABC, every major outlet you can think of. I said yes to all of them, because silence protects abusers, and I was done being silent. My interview with Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes aired 3 weeks after Miranda's arrest. I sat in that studio with my vitiligo on full display. No makeup, no filters, no apologies. And I told the world everything. "You've been through an extraordinary few months," Anderson said, leaning forward with that look of genuine empathy he's famous for. "First, publicly fired for your skin condition, then discovering your sister was being trafficked by your own stepmother. How are you handling all of this?" I took a breath. Honestly, some days I don't know if I'm handling it or if it's handling me. But I keep thinking about something my dad used to say. The best revenge is living well. And I'm choosing to live really, really well. Tell us about Lily.
I paused,
How's she doing?
choosing my words carefully. Lily is one of the strongest people I've ever met. She's 16 years old, and she's been through something that would break most adults. But she's in therapy. She's getting medical treatment, and most importantly, she's safe. That's what matters. And you've started a foundation in her name? Yes, the Lily Hayes Foundation. We're dedicated to exposing and preventing medical trafficking of minors. Because here's what most people don't realize. Medical trafficking isn't just something that happens in other countries. It's happening here, in American cities, to American girls. And nobody's talking about it. Until now, Anderson said. Until now, I agreed. The interview went viral. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed 15 million times on YouTube. The foundation's website crashed from traffic. Donations poured in, $2.3 million in the first week alone. Survivors started coming forward with their own stories. The FBI opened 11 new investigations based on tips we received. But the most important call came from an estate lawyer named Bernard Whitmore. He'd been trying to reach me for weeks, he said, but I'd been unreachable during the chaos. "Miss Carter, I represent your late father's estate. I have some information that I think you need to hear in person. Can you come to my office?" I met him the next day in downtown Seattle, in one of those old money law offices with mahogany furniture and oil paintings of dead white men in wigs. Bernard was in his 70s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Your father came to see me about 6 months before he died," Bernard said, sliding an envelope across his desk. "He asked me to give you this if 2 conditions were met, his death and Miranda being convicted of a felony. I've been holding on to it for 2 years, hoping I'd never have to deliver it. But here we are." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in my dad's handwriting, a handwriting I hadn't seen since he died. Jasmine, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you're reading this, Miranda showed her true colors. I suspected she wasn't who she claimed to be. The way she looked at money, the way she treated Lily when she thought no one was watching, the way she smiled when discussing my estate planning. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better when I was alive. I was lonely after my mother and I divorced. I made a mistake marrying Miranda. But I can protect you now. Enclosed is documentation for a shadow trust I created. If Miranda is convicted of any felony, the entire estate, including her controlling stake in Hayes Medical Technologies, reverts to you. The shares, the properties, the accounts, everything. It was always meant to be yours, sweetheart. I just had to make sure she couldn't contest it. Use this money wisely. Build something beautiful. And take care of Lily. She's your sister, even if we don't share the same blood. She needs you. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry I didn't say it enough when I could. Dad. I read it 3 times before the tears came. Bernard pushed a box of tissues across the desk without comment. The documentation is all in order. As of Miranda's conviction yesterday, you are now the controlling shareholder of Hayes Medical Technologies. The company is currently valued at approximately $320 million. Your personal share is worth roughly $280 million. The number didn't feel real. It felt like monopoly money, like a hypothetical, like something that happened to other people in movies, not to women who'd been fired 3 months ago for having unprofessional skin. What do I do with that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Bernard smiled. Whatever you want. That's the beautiful part of ownership, Miss Carter. You get to decide. I thought about that question for a long time. What do you do with $280 million and a pharmaceutical company you never asked for? Most people would retire, travel the world, buy ridiculous things, disappear into luxury. But I kept thinking about Sungwon Kang, about the look on his face when he told me I wasn't perfect enough to represent his company, about the way my colleagues had averted their eyes, too afraid to stand up for what was right. And I realized money isn't just currency. It's power. It's leverage. It's the ability to change systems that are broken. So I called an emergency board meeting at Hayes Medical Technologies. I'd never been to the headquarters before, a gleaming glass building in Bellevue with views of Lake Washington. The board members looked skeptical when I walked in. A 28-year-old Black woman with vitiligo taking control of a pharmaceutical empire? I could see them calculating how quickly they could marginalize me. I didn't give them the chance. Good afternoon, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table, my dad's old seat. I'm Jasmine Carter, your new majority shareholder. Some of you knew my father. Some of you worked with Miranda. I'm neither of them. So let's start fresh. I opened my presentation on the screen behind me. Hayes Medical Technologies currently has significant investments in several companies. One of them is LuxGlow Beauty. I'm sure you're all familiar with their recent public relations challenges. A few uncomfortable shifts. LuxGlow had been hemorrhaging value since my LinkedIn post went viral.
We're going to divest completely from LuxGlow unless they make immediate and substantial changes to their leadership and corporate culture. And we're not just talking about a press release and some diversity training. We're talking about real, measurable change. With all due respect, Miss Carter, one of the older board members interrupted, LuxGlow represents a substantial return on investment. Divesting would cost us 12% in short-term losses. I have done the math. But here's what you're not calculating. The long-term cost of being associated with a company that publicly discriminates against employees. The lawsuits, the boycotts, the brand damage. We can cut our losses now, or we can sink with them later. Your choice. I let that hang in the air for a moment. But here's the thing. I'm not just here to avoid losses. I'm here to create value. Real value. So here's my proposal.
We take the money we lose from the LuxGlow divestment and we invest it in something better. We start an inclusive beauty division. Products for people with skin conditions, disabilities, every imperfection the industry has tried to erase. We call it Flawed Beauty, and we make it our flagship brand. The room exploded into conversation. Some board members looked intrigued, others looked horrified. One older man in a bow tie actually laughed out loud. "You want to invest millions in a beauty line for flawed people?" Bow tie man said, still chuckling. "That's the most ridiculous business proposition I've ever heard." I smiled. Is it? Because last I checked, 83% of people have some form of skin condition. Acne, scarring, vitiligo, rosacea, eczema. That's not a niche market. That's the majority. And right now, there are 0 major beauty brands actually serving them. 0. We'd have first mover advantage in a market worth billions. The laughter stopped. "I've already done preliminary market research," I continued, pulling up slides. "I've talked to dermatologists, I've surveyed consumers, I've calculated production costs and profit margins. This isn't a charity project. This is a business opportunity, a big one. And if you're smart, you'll see it." The vote took 3 hours of debate. But in the end, 8 out of 12 board members voted yes. We divested from LuxGlow, we launched Flawed Beauty, and we changed everything. But that wasn't enough, because LuxGlow was still out there, still discriminating, still promoting impossible beauty standards. So I made a few strategic calls to other Hayes medical investors, people who also had shares in LuxGlow. I explained the situation, I showed them the math, I reminded them about liability and brand risk. Within 2 weeks, 3 more major investors demanded LuxGlow's board remove Sung-Hwang Kang as CEO. The board had no choice: fire him or watch their stock collapse entirely. They fired him. His replacement was a woman named Dr. Aisha Thompson, a Black woman with alopecia who'd been fighting for inclusive beauty standards for 20 years. She was brilliant, ruthless, and she had a score to settle with an industry that had told her she wasn't beautiful. I called her personally to congratulate her on the appointment. "Jasmine Carter," she said when she answered, "I've been hoping you'd call. I wanted to make sure you knew this wasn't personal against Sung-Hwan Kang. It was business." She laughed, a deep, genuine laugh. "Sweetheart, it was absolutely personal, and that's what made it perfect. Men like him have spent decades making everything personal while pretending it was just business. It's about time we returned the favor." We became allies after that, collaborators. Flawed Beauty didn't compete with LuxGlow anymore. We partnered with them. 2 companies dedicated to actual inclusion, not performative diversity campaigns. Within a year, we'd captured 15% of the beauty market. Within 2 years, 23%. We weren't just selling products, we were selling a revolution. But the work with Lily's Foundation was just as important. The FBI had arrested 17 people connected to Miranda's trafficking ring. The network had extended across 4 states and 2 countries. Dr. Chen testified against all of them in exchange for a reduced sentence, 2 years instead of 20. Some people thought that was too lenient. I didn't, because Dr. Chen did something most people in his position never do. He told the truth. He handed over every file, every transaction record, every communication. He burned down the entire network to try to make amends. I visited him once in federal prison in Oregon. He looked smaller than I expected, older, broken. "Why did you tell me?" I asked him through the plexiglass divider. "Because I saw your post," he said quietly, "about being fired for your skin, about refusing to be ashamed anymore. And I realized I'd been ashamed for 2 years, ashamed and complicit. Your stepmother told me those girls consented, that they understood what was happening. I wanted to believe her because it was easier than facing what I knew was true." And what was true? That I was participating in something evil for money, that I'd become exactly the kind of doctor I swore I'd never be. I can't fix what I did, but I could stop it from happening to anyone else. That's why I called you. I left that prison feeling something I didn't expect. Forgiveness, not for what he'd done, but for the fact that he tried to make it right. Sometimes that's all you can ask for. Miranda's trial was a media spectacle. Court TV covered it gavel to gavel. The courtroom was packed every single day. I sat in the front row with Lily, and we watched as prosecutor after prosecutor laid out the evidence. The medical records, the bank transactions, the testimonies from the other survivors. Miranda's lawyers tried everything. They claimed she was coerced, that she didn't understand what was happening, that she was a victim of Dr. Chen's manipulation. None of it worked. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the four women stood and read the verdict. Guilty on all counts: human trafficking, child endangerment, medical fraud, conspiracy.
She didn't scream. She just sat there, perfectly composed, like she was attending a board meeting instead of her own conviction. The judge sentenced her to 18 years in federal prison, eligible for parole in 12. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked directly at me, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of prison, fear of irrelevance. Because that's what happens to people like Miranda. They don't just lose their freedom, they lose their power, their influence, their ability to hurt people. They become footnotes. I never visited Miranda in prison. Lily did once, 3 years after the conviction. She came back shaken. She tried to tell me it was all for me, Lily said, sitting in my living room with tea she wasn't drinking, that she sold my eggs to give me a better life, that everything she did was because she loved me. What did you say? I told her that love doesn't require anesthesia. Lily looked up at me, and I saw my father's strength in her eyes. And then I left. I don't think I'll go back. You don't have to, I said. You don't owe her anything. Not forgiveness, not understanding, not even a second thought. She nodded. I know. Dr. Patel says I'm doing really well. The hormone treatments are working. My fertility prognosis has improved. I might even be able to have kids naturally someday if I want to. And do you want to? She smiled. Maybe, someday. But right now, I'm focused on medical school. McGill accepted me for next fall. I hugged her so tight I thought one of us might break. Flawed Beauty exceeded every projection. Within 3 years, we'd hit $150 million in annual revenue. Within 5 years, $400 million. We'd become the fastest growing beauty company in North America, and it was all because we did something revolutionary. We told the truth. We put models with vitiligo, with scarring, with port wine stains, with every flaw in our campaigns. We hired executives with disabilities. We made products that actually worked for real skin, not airbrushed fantasies, and people responded. Our tagline was simple. You're not flawed. You're just finished being edited. It resonated. Target came calling with a distribution deal. 1,800 stores nationwide. Sephora wanted in too. Then Ulta. Then international markets. We couldn't manufacture fast enough to meet demand. And you know what the best part was? LuxGlow, the company that fired me, launched their own inclusive line 6 months after we launched Flawed Beauty. They called it Imperfect Beauty. It was a transparent ripoff. It bombed spectacularly because consumers aren't stupid. They can smell performative activism from a mile away, and LuxGlow's attempt to cash in on inclusion without actually believing in it showed. Their stock dropped 17%. They laid off 300 employees. And industry insiders started calling it the Karma Collection. I ran into Seung Hwan Kang one more time, beauty industry conference in Vegas, about 6 months after LuxGlow's inclusive line failed. I saw him by the coffee station, looking older and more tired than I remembered him. He tried to avoid me, but I wasn't going to let that happen. "Mr. Kang," I said, walking up with a smile that definitely didn't reach my eyes. He turned, and I saw him physically flinch. "Jasmine, how's consulting going? I heard you're with Choi Cosmetics now." "I'm managing," he said stiffly.
It's a good company. Oh, I'm sure it is. I just mean it must be different from LuxGlow's $500 million operation. I took a sip of my coffee. But you're probably glad to be out of that mess, honestly. I heard their stock is in free fall. Are you here to gloat? He asked quietly. No, I said honestly. I'm here to thank you. He blinked. Thank me? Yeah, because if you hadn't fired me that day, I never would have built Flawed Beauty. I never would have exposed Miranda. I never would have saved my sister. So really, you did me the biggest favor of my life. I smiled again, this time genuine. You showed me exactly who I didn't want to be. And that's worth more than any salary you ever paid me. I walked away without waiting for a response. Because that's the thing about revenge. The best kind isn't destruction. It's building something so beautiful, so successful, so undeniably good that the person who tried to tear you down becomes a cautionary tale instead of a villain. Today, I'm 31 years old. I'm a CEO. I'm a multimillionaire. I'm the founder of a beauty company worth close to $500 million. And I have vitiligo across 30% of my body. My skin is unprofessional. And I'm more successful than Sungwon Kang will ever
in gynecology. She wants to specialize in reproductive trauma, helping women who've been through what she went through. She's 22, brilliant, and stronger than anyone I've ever met. The Lily Hayes Foundation has helped expose 14 trafficking operations. We've rescued 43 minors, we've lobbied for stricter regulations on fertility clinics, and we've changed laws in 6 states. Miranda's still in prison. She'll be eligible for parole in 9 more years. Lily says she won't attend the hearing. And me? I'm still building, still creating, still proving that the things other people call flaws are actually your greatest strengths. Because here's what I learned from all of this. You don't need perfection to succeed. You just need courage. Courage to stand up when everyone else sits down. Courage to speak truth when silence would be easier. Courage to be exactly who you are, even when the world tells you that's not enough. My skin doesn't make me less professional. It makes me more human. And humanity, as it turns out, is excellent for business. So if you're watching this and someone's ever told you you're not enough, not pretty enough, not thin enough, not able-bodied enough, not perfect enough, I need you to understand something. That person was lying. Not because they wanted to hurt you, but because they were terrified of what you might become if you realized your own power. You're not flawed. You're just finished letting other people hold the pen to your story. Now go write it yourself.